Since Football Manager 22 came out, I have won the Streamer Showdown, made another final in the Streamer Showdown, and guided Floridsdorfer AC to the top flight and to the Champions League quarterfinals all the way from the Austrian second division in just 7 years. So we have been very successful on FM22, and we have largely been using the same system for all of that time. So let's break down what it is. Well, this is what it is. So, enjoy. That's it. I wouldn't do that to you. Come on. But what are the principles of this formation? Why does it work? And what are we looking to accomplish? And what are we giving up? Because, of course, every formation is giving up. But let's get class in session here. Where's my time? Here we go. The first principle is forcing tough decisions. Now, forcing tough decisions is very important in any tactic. You want to try and put opposition defenders in a position they're unfamiliar with and they don't necessarily know how to react to. Now, you don't normally see this formation a lot, so we basically already accomplished that, but we're going to look at some matches and break down how exactly that works. Another principle is quick passing. That is something that we accomplish through our extremely high tempo. In order for this tactic to work, the ball needs to move quickly. If the ball moves slowly, lethargically, we're not going to be able to exploit the spaces that we create because there's not as much space between them. The third principle, defending inside out. As you can tell from this tactic, we are basically taking away the middle of the field and then reacting to balls out wide. This tactic is still effective against teams that play with wide formations. Sometimes we will make a tweak or two to account for those, but we defend inside out. Our fourth principle is pushing the back line. We have 2 advanced forwards. That means you cannot get comfortable for a second on the opposition back line, and you are always going to be dealing with runs into the channels and runs over the top to keep you busy. This frees up space, which we're going to see in a second. And our fifth principle, the actual players that we are able to get on the field in a positionally responsible tactic are more talented than normal players in a normal tactic. Why? Because we don't have any wingers. We have converted a few wingers like Christian Kuba into being able to play into our tactic, but you'll notice that they actually have the ability to pass and a little bit more intelligence than your average winger at this level. What this does mean is we need specific types of players to be able to fit into our system and make it work well, because you need some athleticism somewhere, but midfielders generally have more talent than wingers when it comes to being able to control, pass, and move, where wingers are usually just point and shoot options if they're true wingers. And that's what I was trying to get out of this system, so that we had more overall talent defensively and on the ball. It's a theory that clearly has worked. As for the actual instructions that are active, these can be fluid depending on situation. If your defense is not bad at playing out of the back, don't play out of the back. You don't need to, because when you unclick this, they're just more likely to clear the ball. We have 2 advanced forwards. You put pressure on the team regardless. Pass into space, passing directness generally in the middle, and the tempo extremely high so that we are forcing the ball to move quickly up the field, counter pressing and countering once we win possession, because you will have significant numbers up and the ability to counter press initially after a turnover. Now, the distribution, we're actually going to roll it out because advanced forwards typically aren't tall enough to be able to win the ball, and we have no supporting person on the second line to win the second ball, so rolling it out short allows us to get our really high level passing midfield involved. Out of possession, we only do 2 things. Line a little bit higher. If you feel really comfortable with the speed of your back line, you can do something like this, and pressing a little bit higher. You can also, if you're chasing a game, do something like that to put more pressure on the opposition, but it will wear your team out if you do that twice a week for an entire year. Let's get into some matches though. How does this play? Why does it work? Our first example is going to be a European match that I played on stream earlier today. And if you want to watch streams, of course, the link is down in the description to the Twitch channel. You can also watch the live YouTube channel, which has episodes of every single stream of this save, so that you can watch it in a condensed form if you don't have time for Twitch. Now, I know your first concern with this tactic would likely be the defense. So we'll start with the back line and work our way forward in terms of what we're expecting from each of our players. Now, what you're going to see is us turn the ball over. We're taking a short kick. I do not have play out from the back, so once Novaish feels pressure, he hits the ball up to the channel, kind of underhits it. We're not able to get to the ball. That's going to happen throughout the course of a game. Now, when they win the ball, it is their right fullback that is putting pressure on us, Preciado. He is going to get by the initial striker, but you see our left-sided midfielder, Christian Kuba, is already reacting, and we have 2 players for 2, with the striker following some supplementary midfielder on the left side of their 4-2-3-1. On this side of the field, that would be Henneman, a new player who sucks. But that's not the point of this video. Sorry, Henneman. Now, if it is the fullback carrying the ball forward, this is generally going to fall to the outside midfielder to be able to hustle over and defend this, with the fullback, in this case Vari, dropping in to defend a run from the winger. The two center backs are picking up the two central runners, which would be the central attacking midfielder in a 4-2-3-1 and the lone striker, with my right back Tarjus Jorgen Jakobsen picking up the left winger. One thing that's important to notice is that because we're playing a box-to-box on the opposite side of the field, which has no adherence to the wide part, you can play a Carrilero if you want them to stay farther on the other side of the field or you're getting beat over there. That's important to note, and is a change you can make, is putting one or two Carrileros on the side of this formation to take away that wide space more aggressively. This is the farthest outside midfielder that we have. This is not as dangerous as it would look. Even though Garzón is over on this side of the field, in effect what you have is a huge numerical advantage for us defensively on this side of the field. While they have three players that are trying to make a play here, we have a defensive shell with my striker tracking back, my defensive midfielder, my left back, my left-sided midfielder, and my central midfielder, making up essentially a five-man shell to screen this off. Man marked in the box, with Garzón potentially tracking this extra run. The only thing that actually puts us in trouble here is a very quick, precise aerial switch to this guy, to the fullback on the other side. Even though you're open to that, you are funneling the team down one side of the field, and if you have that precise cross, you can use the airtime to react. Let's look at an example. Preciado is going to drive the ball forward. He's going to whip in a cross. We're going to win the header. Nice reactions by Torbjornsson, and the ball is actually going to go to that left back we were so worried about, but who is literally within 10 meters of him, able to close him down, and that is Garzón, who was just initially pinched in more immediately. And you can imagine if that cross had gone directly to Tsimikas, Garzón wouldn't be too far behind it in that situation. So you are able to recover on your airtime while the ball is in the air most of the time. Now when Tsimikas works it back to the middle, we're in a fairly tricky situation again. Back and forth very quickly is tough for this defense, but we do have Kuba, we do have Vari, and we have 2-on-2 on this side, and if the ball goes out wide to Preciado again, Vari will react there. The single most dangerous thing for defense on this tactic is if the ball goes out to Preciado and he plays it first time into this pocket of space and Gonzalez beats Kuba to that spot. That is the single biggest tactical disadvantage we are creating, but even against the best teams in the world, as we proved in the Champions League, where we knocked out Chelsea, we knocked out Juventus, and we knocked out Bayern, and then we took Barcelona to extra time in that Champions League quarterfinal with a much less talented team. Even the best teams in the world aren't going to hit that pass very often, and it is absolutely worth it because no tactic is completely immune to being overwhelmed, and we are able to create some truly unique matchups going forward. But what do you want from your back line? Let's focus on the two center backs. You want people that are tall, taller. We counter-press, and we counter-press with two strikers who are very much in the other team's business. This means you're going to get a lot of long balls, and you need your two center backs to be able to win those long balls, because if they can knock it down to one of four different midfielders to help you retain possession on that second ball. This can help you dominate the flow of a game. You're also going to need them to be fast. They need to be quick enough to survive facing a lot of long balls throughout the course of a game. What do you want from your fullbacks? You want the ability to work up and down the flank for 90 minutes. Fitness, athleticism, work rate, and stamina are the most important things. Defense, then offense, has been an effective way for me to build fullbacks. Our run all the way to the quarterfinals had a fullback that didn't have over 10 first touch, passing, or crossing on the left side, but he was a good defender who could get up and down the wing for 90 minutes, keep track of his role, and fill that wide space, because you need to be able to get up the field as well to occupy a wide position and spread out the defense. If your fullback can't get there, this tactic simply will not work. Let's move on to the midfield. And for that, we're going to need to continue this highlight. You see, instead of going wide, Salzburg tries to play it through the middle. Novais is there. Sorry, Novais. We've been taught how to pronounce Portuguese names. Vari wisely able to turn around, and because we have that high tempo, dumps the ball right into the channel. You will see this a lot on this tactic. Your two strikers running into channels as advanced forwards do, receiving the ball with an opportunity to make plays, or better yet, push the back line down the field and then stop and turn around. Henneman, in this case, is forced to stop and turn around immediately, and we see our tactics start to take shape. This is what our midfield is going to look like. These two wide midfielders are absolutely key to the playmaking. The deep-lying playmaker, which in this case is Hector Helman Zapata, needs to be the metronome. They need to be a primary deep-lying playmaker that can pass the ball so that when they receive it, they can find that space in the other channel for Mate Balas. And very quickly, we've taken the game from one end of the field to the other. And we see our midfield starting to wreak havoc, but it's wreaking havoc in stages. Our right-sided midfielder, Garçon's going to occupy a space right around here and provide an excellent triangle working with the right back, Sigurgren Jakobsen. Our center attacking midfielder is going to launch himself into the box as essentially a third striker when we get into this sort of attacking position. And Christian Kuba is going to float wherever he deems best on this side of the field. The ball goes back to Sigurgren Jakobsen, and instead of continuing that triangle, he's going to cut it back to the player that is almost always completely unmarked in this system, and that is the deep-lying playmaker, Hector Helman Zapata. At this point, we are exactly where we want to be with this tactic. We have overloads all over the field. Not only is Christian Kuba inside their defense right here, we've got Owen van der Horst lurking around behind one of their midfielders. Their defense is out of position. Not to mention, Zoltan Nadadvari is all alone on the other side of the field because everybody's so preoccupied with pinching in to try and defend. So Christian Kuba receives the ball in that space, and while he has a lot of options to pass and what have you, he elects to go for the shot, and I'm never going to get mad at him for that. And while Garçon and Kuba are just lounging outside of the box, we see Henneman pick up the rebound, and you'll see your strikers cut the ball back to an attacking third striker, as I like to call them, the center attacking midfielder, who's able to put the ball in the back of the net. So what do you need from these four midfield positions to make it work? In the midfield line, your deepest lying player needs to be the playmaker. There are two different ways to make this work, but they always need to have playmaking tendencies. This means they can't be an idiot. They need to be at least mildly intelligent. This is decisions, composure, anticipation, and vision. They need to be able to see the field and react well to being pressed. This is a Busquets style player that we use in this system. It can be a deep-lying playmaker. It can be a roaming playmaker. Or with the Austrian national team I also manage, it can just be a defensive midfielder. But they're still going to end up on the ball a lot and need to have that ability. Then you have your two wide midfielders. I've had a lot of success with those wide midfielders having their dominant foot on the inside. Why is this? Let's have a look. In this tactic, you will often end up in a position where you drop the ball to a fullback that's pushing it up the field. Now, in this case, Nadadvari has taken that ball very quickly. Sometimes they'll drag it all the way down to the end line and then bring it back to the inside. They will always be looking for your outside midfielder to pick the ball up at the corner and either shoot, cross, work the ball back to your deep-lying playmaker, whatever. You know, 3 arrows there, 3 different things that they can try and do. And they're all going to be doing that with their inside foot. This is a very common thing. Instead of playing the ball outside, which isn't going to happen much, they're often going to be cutting onto their inside foot to try and pick out one of a number of potential runs, or in this case, if you're Christian Kuba, scoring an absolutely disgusting goal. You won't get that all the time, but what you will get is a player taking the touch onto their inside foot and then selecting from those number of options. Now, what roles would you like to use on the outside? I have had success with a large variety of roles that allow for fluidity. These are box-to-box midfielder, carrilero, ball-winning midfielders if you feel like you have a winger or fullback or maybe even an outside midfielder on that side that you really need to deal with, but they need to be players that aren't wedded to a spot. Deep-lying playmakers, for example, won't work in this position because they just do not look to move nearly enough, and you need to have players that are willing to move around in that space. They're the proverbial straw that shakes the drink. Now, your center midfielder on attack has to be maybe your best player because they have such an ability to influence the game with their ability. In this game, we're using a player named David Shestak as our center attacking midfielder. Usually we use a guy named Owen van der Horst, who is objectively one of the best players on our team. But Shestak in our first game of the season showed just how influential you can be. As somebody who's positioned right in the middle of the park, he is available to accept a knockdown from Tor Bjornsson. Now, this is what I talked about earlier, being able to win those second balls with all your midfielders. Plays it back to Zapata and has absolutely no need to stick around. David Shestak is taking off. Their defense has not realized it yet, and Shestak is going to be able to run right through their 2 center backs. Christian Kuba, who's got that passing ability, is able to play it into his path. And because David Shestak is at best mid, he doesn't score. But that is an exceptional play that when it happens in real time is honestly almost seductive. And in this example and in this match, because of where we are on the field, they actually have 4 players to match up with us as well. But once you get the ball a little further up the field to where their forward, Raguz in this case, isn't able to help out, these 3 midfielders will get distracted with these three midfielders, and you will be able to slip that attacking midfielder in behind, in which case not only do they need to be athletes that can score, they also need to have excellent decision-making and passing chops. Now, obviously, you're probably not going to find a player who is great at all of these things, but they need to be really good at one or two things. Owen van der Horst, for example, is an absolutely brilliant and creative facilitator who is pretty darn good in front of the goal. He is not, however, a great athlete and cannot do what David Šestak just did. While one look at David Šestak shows that he is actually a pretty good athlete, but is nowhere near the creative or facilitating mind of Owen van der Horst. He's also not bad at it either. We've also played Kim Yoon-kyu there, who's a decent facilitator and decent shooter, but certainly creative and certainly a very good athlete. It's a unique position that essentially becomes whatever your best player that can play there is capable of doing. Center mid on attack and advanced playmaker on attack, if you shift this position to defensive midfielder on defender support, are effective roles to play out of this position. With Austria, I use Yusuf Demir, for example, as an advanced playmaker on attack from the central position. Now, it's important to note that an advanced playmaker on attack is going to drop a little deeper to involve themselves in build-up play, but they will apply the same pressures some of the time. But enough for the midfield. Let's get to the forwards, what you need and what they do. Advanced forwards are very simple individuals. They push the back line, which is one of our 5 principles. This is important because the farther you push the back line, the more room your midfield has to operate and knock the ball around, and the more room your wingbacks have to get up the field and spread them out. And we're going to head to the Sturm Graz game for a tremendous example of how this happens. The ball's been turned over and Nadadvari has won it. The ball's going to go up quickly to one of our forwards. Now, these guys don't need to be aerially great. If they are, it's an excellent bonus. But in this case, they just need to be able to run. They need to be able to work and run some more. They need to be fast because they are going to be the first line of offense, obviously. The ball goes up to Mate Balaz, able to run into that position and knock the ball down. But what you'll notice is Mate Balaz does not stop running. He has been the most effective player in this system for years. He knocks the ball down and keeps running while the midfielders pass it amongst themselves, and then Christian Kuba drops a ball into the channel. When you play with the level of intensity that we play with, this is what your forwards are going to need to do. Of course, they're going to get those plays where they are in on goal and you just bop it over the top and there they go. Or you can have those two striker plays where one gets the ball and plays it through for the other. But this is what they're contributing to the team buildup. Those balls into the channel that they then are able to run and go get. And what I want to emphasize before you see this is Mate Balaz is not a great passer. He is a hard-working athlete with goal-scoring chops. That's what we look for. The holy trinity of dribbling, finishing, and first touch, and the holy athleticism of players that can play as an advanced forward. It's a very common regen type and archetype in Football Manager. As long as they can play short, simple passes, though, they will be okay. Because even though Garson's not at the corner of the box, guess who is? The fullback, Tarjus Jurgen Jakobsen. Now we have backed their entire defensive line to the edge of the 6-yard box. Their midfield is now having to cope with being entirely overwhelmed, and absolutely no one can step out to defend a fullback who has just strutted within 12 yards of the goal and scored. The forwards in this system, outside of all the normal two-forward interactions you see, are there to play fetch. You hit the ball into the channel, they get to it first, they hold it, you drive them back up the field, and then you win. You don't want poachers or poacher-style players to be playing in this system because they usually aren't intelligent enough or technical enough to be able to do the things you just saw Mate Balaz do. The people with good attributes in all of the advanced forward highlighted attribute sections are going to be more than capable of being huge difference makers here. So to simplify our breakdown of the 3 phases, athleticism, playmaking, determination. Not the actual attribute, like the work rate and the stamp. You get what I mean. The athleticism. You put those 3 things together, you can execute this tactic, make your little roll tweaks if you're worried about somebody over here, or you got a ball winner over here or something, or maybe we really need the playmaker further up the field, so this defensive duty is a little bit better. You can make those little tweaks, but this shape and this formation has proven to me that it can beat any other shape and formation in Football Manager as long as we get the players right and the instructions and the rules right. So enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's fast. It's offensive, and it's explosive. And may it bring you much success. If you heard me mention opposition instructions and have no idea how to actually use those, I did make this video a little while ago that you should check out. Keep your tactic brain fed.